And here we are. We're live, and right as my DB timed out due to inactivity. Perfect timing. But welcome
Mhm.
to the stream, all you out there. This should be a really fun sort of finals match between Aratos and DK0, who are both extremely good players in all these DM era formats. And this is going to be a very unique match because this is the Breaker finals match, unprecedented tournament, really, because no one's really explored this format in the past, and it's been a blast to sort of see people play. And I'm not alone in commentating this momentous occasion. We've also got Soul Emerald 69 here, who was actually the fourth place player in this tournament as well. So they know their way around the format quite a bit. So what are your thoughts on this upcoming match, Soul? And did you play either of these players in the tournament? And if so, what are your thoughts on their decks?
Hello everybody. I was, of course, one of the people that was able to make it pretty far, and along that journey, I did actually face DK0, and so I do have at least some knowledge about what they're playing. I also caught a bit of the winners finals match previously, just to get a bit of idea what's going to happen in this match, and I don't want to give anything away yet, but
Mm.
I think in general, I think both players are really solid, and I think they've both done a really great job in this format from what I've seen. And so, I in this regard too, it'll be interesting as well because on who to root for, which we'll get into, I think, a little bit more later if when we see the decks. But yeah,
Yeah, well, we'll have to see what people are playing, but it seems like, going first in this format is a huge deal because Scientist FTK is around, and it seems like Aratos, if they are playing Scientist FTK, did not get the combo in hand. But that might not matter. They might not be on Scientist FTK, and even if they are, there are still ways to interact with their opponent to prevent them from pulling off the Scientist FTK if DK is on that. But it looks like both players are
yeah,
going to start off with some sets.
mm, yeah, I definitely as well. Especially, it's sort of been very common knowledge that often going first is the way to go in these older formats, but definitely with how scientist has affected things, it really becomes important to win the rock paper scissors or that roll.
Oh yeah, and people might be surprised at Aratos' sort of aggressive play here, just bringing out an Exiled Force, popping the Witch. A very big risk because Sangan and Witch are still in the format, and bringing out Exiled
Hmm.
Force on an unknown set to pop it can be a bit risky. But you kind of do have to get aggressive in this format because the Scientist FTK does need a fair amount of life points to actually pull off. So by doing this,
Yeah.
Aratos is able to get in for 2,400. We see the Gravekeeper's Spy tech here, which is a really interesting tech. It's been experimented with in Yada, showing its power
Hmm.
here. Very, very good defensive option. Also enables you to get pretty aggressive as well, which, as I just said, very important in this format.
Yeah, what you're saying there as well about just going for the blind exiled, it definitely can feel bad at times, but like you said, it is a bit of a faster format, and the realistic chance is that there's only two of those cards that you have to really care about. I guess Serpent as well, if that's included in the deck. But if you can get something like a Tomato or a Gravekeeper Spy here, it's not a bad trade either way. And
Yeah.
as we can see as well, getting in damage is probably more important than necessarily caring about like the long card advantage game in
Yeah, and I
that
think you
regard.
bring up a good point about like, there are only a couple cards that really punish the exiled play. And I think that's something that like takes some getting used to in the DM era formats because there are so many powerful cards that sometimes you just have to sort of play the odds and be like, well, there are these couple cards that do punish me here, but if it's anything else, I'm in a pretty good spot. So I just got to go for
Hmm.
it.
All right,
And yeah, we
and
see Reasoning coming down, which does imply that DK is on a bit of a Scientist FTK deck here, because they do play Reason and get out cards on field. And 5 is generally the correct thing to call here, because if they've got a
mhm.
Scientist in hand, they can just normal summon it if a turtle's brought out. Whereas if they have a turtle in hand and they bring out a Scientist, Scientist is still very strong, but it's a bit less easy to get what you need there in that case. Um,
Yeah, definitely is often gonna be the common call most of the time. Usually, if you're changing it up, you're gonna have to do that more so in the late game when you have more knowledge
yeah.
about what are the odds of which cards you're going to see in that case?
Yeah, or potentially if you have ways to stop your opponent's plays, like traps and stuff, you could call 6 for Jinzo or something. So it really does depend on the
Yes.
various states of the game. But I actually feel like, and this might be a hot take, but I've seen some other people say it as well. I feel like Reasoning might be a card to cut in the future for Scientist decks. 'Cause it can be very strong, don't get me wrong, but it is a bit of a gamble, and oftentimes your opponent knows the best thing to call. So like you're not going to get what you really want out of it. Now it can also dump a monster in grave, which you can bring back off Reborn or Premat or something like that. But I don't know, the cards always felt just very underwhelming to me, in general. But what are your thoughts on it?
I guess it's also going to depend on how often they're going to hit turtle when they
Yeah,
call 5-2.
I mean, yeah,
Because yeah, oh, I was just going to say that like realistically though, um there is technically more monsters that are not level 5 than there are, so it should fairly often be be a card you'll see. But even then, like just getting a like if you're not able to like combine it with like say, say you got a Gillosaurus with no really follow up, then yeah, it's definitely not as great of a card as you would want it to be in that regard.
yeah. And we got to see Scientist actually just show off its stuff as a toolbox card right there.
Hmm.
The card is not just useful for the FTK; it's also just a very very strong card to bring out. Like Dark Balter, very powerful fusion monster. There are so many cards in this format that like being destroyed by battle and getting their effects off. Balter puts a stop to that for the most part. Actually, potentially another reason to play Spy because Spy is 2k defense, which Balter can't get over. So it will not be able to negate Spy's effect. Now, if your opponent brings out Fiend Skull Dragon, that will negate Spy's effect. But most people are
That's
not going to bring out
interesting.
Fiend Skull.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be destroyed by battle for the flip effect to be negated. That's interesting.
So yeah, Fiend Skull just negates flip effects in general, I believe.
Okay,
And it can't be
yeah, but
targeted by
battle.
traps. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it just has to battle it as opposed to, like, destroying it by battle
Yeah.
in that regard.
It's kind of funny
Okay.
because before like super playing this format, I kind of viewed Fiend Skull Dragon as the worst of the sort of Balter, Senshi, Fiend Skull sort of trio of fusions. Because like Senshi
Mhm.
shuts down traps, which is of course really good. Balter is just insane because of all the powerful normal spells and powerful monster effects that get triggered when they're sent by battle. Um, but Fiend Skulls kind of seemed underwhelming to me. But given the prevalence of things like Raigeki Break, Ring of Destruction in this format now, and also if you have the read on your opponent that they have a flip monster set, and not like a card that necessarily cares about being destroyed by battle, Fiend Skull actually can come up. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's not a bad compromise. It does, play around certain traps if you don't wanna necessarily go, like, in the 2K route of, like, paying for Senshi and then paying for Bolter,
yeah.
uh, for sure.
But
Yeah.
there's some interesting comments in the YouTube chat, so I just want to go through those a bit. There are a lot of greetings and hello to everyone who has joined the stream. Pleasure to have you here.
Hello,
And
everyone.
DNA says getting close to 1,000. Yeah, if you're watching the stream, not subscribed, definitely subscribe to the channel. We are super close to that 1,000 subscriber milestone. Really cool to see. And
Yeah.
speaking of cool to see, we're seeing a very interesting play by DK's part where they bring out Restrict, suck up the Spy, crash into, or try to crash into a Ratos Spy, but okay, that will
Oh,
get Mirror
no.
Force. And yeah, that's a risk of doing that play. They could potentially be at the end of the game here. Um, but that's kind of what you got to do. If you're in a desperate enough spot, you got to kind of go for it either way. I mean, they could have brought out Senshi as well, and then that would have also allowed
Yeah.
them to crash over another monster. But they wouldn't have actually had the life points to pay for Senshi there, so it wouldn't have really
Yeah,
made a
and,
difference.
like, the other issue is, like, the life points, you're not clearing the full board in that regard, because you'll
Yeah,
probably just have to go after scientists, at that point, or
yeah.
even then, like, it yeah.
I was kind of surprised that DK didn't go after Scientist, instead trying to crash into the Spy, because I feel like Scientist is the more dangerous card. But I guess if you've got meta in hand that can bring out another Thousand Eyes Restrict, suck up the Spy here, and that'll be pretty decent. I feel like you can just bring the Restrict in defense though here without losing
Mhm.
much. because 2K defense is pretty good, but
Yeah. But like also couldn't I guess the scientists can just go after the well, I guess not.
oh,
I
well,
was gonna say scientists can go thousand eyes into to get rid of their thousand eyes and
that's true. But it would be zero
yeah.
attack, and so that would be good. But yeah, Ring of Destruction showing its power there, ending the
Hmm.
game pretty much. Popping the restrict,
Yeah.
which is very powerful, and then getting in for lethal damage. So I think by this
Yeah.
point we can sort of reveal what each player is playing, because we got to see it
Yeah.
relatively there. Um, but
Hmm.
DK is indeed on a sort of Scientist FTK strategy. As we saw by the reasoning, we saw Trunade get popped in the beginning of the game. And they also are playing Metamorphosis as well, which pairs very well with the Scientist strategy. And Aratos is playing more of a general sort of good stuff deck, sort of tooled to stopping the Scientist FTK, because it is very, very powerful in this format. So you kind of do have to gear your deck around stopping it here.
Yeah, it seems like Eritos was taking some cues from Yada and sort of applying obviously the different things that they've learned from Breaker from that to here.
Yeah. Um, but they're still inciting. So while they're inciting, let's just go through some of the more comments here. If
Yeah.
Clothing95 says reasoning is good only if you play the FTK. If you play the good stuff version with Witch, etc., reasoning is just bad. And I sort of agree with that. I think that reasoning is sort of just a desperate go for FTK or go bust card, personally. But it's good in other decks as well. Like I know that Solo, you've been experimenting with some decks that are actually playing just big monsters in it to sort of play around people calling 5 on reasoning, which is a very interesting idea, and it seemed to be going decently for you.
Yeah, that's sort of like an idea I was thinking about with how reasoning could be applied in general. Like, I don't think you necessarily always have to like go full scientist FDK to use reasoning there. So obviously, I think I showed off the machine version with the XYZs.
Yeah,
But I've been messing around with some other versions. Like I have a Necrofear version that I've been using. I got a Dark Paladin version. I think the other one that I think could be of interest though is the light meta variation. Basically that and what Necrofear they're sort of trying to do is that they're trying to use the fact that like at a certain point with those types of reasoning decks you're going to run out of gas at a
yeah.
certain point. So top decking into cards like say Soul of Purity and Light or Necrofear are not bad in my opinion
Well,
in that regard. And
I
so,
mean, they're definitely interesting
yeah,
ideas. So I hope you continue to experiment with them, and I hope that people watching out there, who might just think that the format is just Scientist FTK, sort of see that and think like, oh, maybe that's an idea to experiment with as well. So, and hopefully they try it out as well. But let's just keep
yeah,
going through the comments while before the game starts in earnest. Janjo, welcome
mhm.
to the stream. Happy to have you here. Um, and Cole brings up a correction about Fiend Skull Dragon, where it doesn't actually have to battle; it just negates flip effects. Period. So that's pretty good to know about.
Okay,
But
that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, and we've also got History of YGO1 saying stream is currently just seconds behind, and that is intentional. We lowered the latency here to try and get the comments, more live reacting, less of a delay here, because on the last stream, people were bringing up how the delay was a bit distracting, and so I figured I'd try to shorten it, even if the video quality is slightly worse. I mean, my camera isn't the best video quality in general, anyways, so I figured that shouldn't be that big of a deal. Um, but yeah, we saw the reasoning here, calling 5 and hitting a 4. And, Tomato isn't a bad card to have here. Although kind of interesting that DK put it in attack position. Um,
Mhm.
but I mean, they might just have the combo online. Janjo asks, what would you side? And I think it really does depend on what you've got in the main deck. Like, if Aratos is playing Wang who's in the main deck, then, you don't need to side in Wang Hughes, of course. But if a deck isn't playing Wang Hughes, I think bringing in Wang Hughes against a Scientist FTK deck is really important. Just shuts down the deck entirely, unless they've got a way to clear it. So I think Wang Hughes really, really good. Um, and yep, side in Raigeki Break as well. Cole mentions that. I agree with that as well. I think it's a great piece of disruption, along with Book of Moon. And Janjo asks
Yeah.
who's the co-commentator, and it is Soul, who got 4th place in this tournament. So very, very good player in this format. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say I'm okay. I don't think I'm like I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I feel like oh I gotta always learn, you know?
well, I think that like uh, I mean, we're a small enough format, and like you've ground out a lot of games in it, so I think that you are pretty good in it. Uh, and I also think most of the time, good players don't uh, necessarily think that they're the best in a format. So it's good that you're a bit humble there. Uh, but we're seeing a tomato war going on here, uh,
Yeah,
and classic staple of these DM era formats. But Aretos will
yeah,
kind of get the upper hand here because they'll be able to see what DK brings out and bring out something in response. Um, Scientist is an option to bring out off of Tomato. So if DK brings out something that isn't like Sangan or Witch, then maybe maybe Aretos brings out Scientist, brings out a Restrict, sucks up whatever DK brings out. So there are some interesting
well,
things there.
yeah, you can even still bring it out against, actually, no, never mind, what am I saying? Sorry. Uh, for a second, I'm thinking, oh, scientist is a quick effect. You can summon in the battle phase
Yeah, no, that would
and
be broken. But
yeah,
bring out the spy. Spy showing some even more utility. Being able to win a tomato crash here. Although I
that
feel
is
like
very
that,
fair. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that does mean that Aratos has to have a way to protect that spy, right?
Hmm. Yeah, maybe if they are playing something like Book, they can set the spy again and then get another spy out of the deck.
That would be
That's
really
a
sick.
Yeah, that's another way of going about it. Uh, Definitely though, I think in this case in particular, there could be some discussion. Though I know a lot of times a lot of these decks that include spy just play the spy, but maybe there's consideration to maybe playing like a spear soldier, just because it's 1500 and it can get rid of a tomato as well in that regard.
There
But
definitely is the
yeah,
discussion there, but I think that a lot of people are, and part of why the tomato train was so notable here, um, was because I feel like a lot of people are sort of viewing tomato as a less good card in this format, um,
hmm,
because scientist gives you great access to Balter, which just runs over tomato, so the tomato
yeah,
wards are not happening as often. Um, so I feel like you don't necessarily need to play the 1500 Dark in the deck at this point, but it's all meta dependent, and depending on how the meta shifts after this tournament and future tournaments, it could easily change. But we now know the entire content of DK's hand, and that Eratus did shuffle
yeah.
back the scientist there, um, and DK's got reasoning,
Mhm.
meta, and change. Oof! Oh,
Oh,
this is brutal.
is
This
this
is
gonna be a?
this is
It's gonna be
insane.
2-0?
It might be. Like, this is just such a big
Yeah.
swing. So Aratos firing the IO, chaining the book to it. Uh DK's got a hand of pretty much all spells. I mean, he could have drawn something that actually deals with this, but oh wow, this is brutal. Um
Yeah.
and yeah, and Aratos gets to keep the cards they drew off Mirage from the IO here. Flipping up that spy, bring out another spy, bring out a witch as well. This is just, I mean, there are some things that DK could potentially top deck here that get them back into the game, but they're really few and far between. So, not looking good for DK0 here.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I feel like maybe the expectation of why these matches were gonna be short was just because DK0 would like just maybe win a couple of games to the FTK, but Aretos is doing a really good job just like basically telling him no,
Yeah.
can't do that.
Oh, and knock as well. Oof. That is
Oh gosh.
bro, this might just be the end of the, yep, that's
And
the end of the
there,
game there.
yeah.
As Janjo Zone said, last thing science wants is to be behind on life points, but it might not even mattered there. Just the IO
Wow.
putting in a ton of work. Is that
Goodness
not game? No,
gracious.
that is game. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
wow, that might be the quickest finals match we've shown off on stream here. Array just went
Yeah.
undefeated this tournament, I believe. Um, incredible.
Goodness.
I think this shows
I
that
think this is
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I think is this like Aratos' second win in
In a YGO from
as
zero tournament? I think it might be.
yeah,
Yeah, I think they did win a
yeah,
previous one as well. I mean, they're a very, very good player in all these DM era formats and beyond as well. So, uh, very, very cool to see. And I think that they brought a deck that was really, really tuned for the meta here. And knowing that Scientist was going to be the meta threat, they brought a deck that slayed Scientist. And, it really got to put in work here. So congratulations to both players because, wow, that was incredible to see. And hopefully we can get them on the stream here.
Yeah,
Yeah, Ratos is going to hop in and this will be pretty good. Hello, welcome to the stream and congratulations.
congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, you came here with a deck that just murdered DK0's Scientist FTK build here. And so what are your thoughts on this matchup and like what was your philosophy in building this deck?
Well, I had a very clear plan in mind, both building the deck and going into this matchup. And it's a very simple plan. Just kill him as fast as possible. And throughout this whole tournament, like I've played a bunch of different FTK decks, and that's always how I've just played this matchup. Just go in, because if they're low life, they can't do their kill shot.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean that's all you needed. The spies enabled you to get super aggressive. I mean, like we saw the knock here putting in some work as well, but oh, that was incredible. So do you think that well, I mean, this question goes for you and DK, I guess. But given this match and also given Aratos your performance throughout the tournament, do you think that Scientist is actually, the meta terror that people have been painting it to be? Or do you think it's like maybe even a tier 2 deck given the counterplay to it?
I mean, it's a good deck for sure. Like any deck that can just like have a coin flip to auto FTK, I think it definitely is always a contender.
Hmm.
One thing I've always noticed about this deck though is that it's very soft to a lot of forms of interruption. And so I definitely feel like this deck needs to find more ways to play through cards.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's always the tricky thing with it. Like, there are so many points in the combo where you're down on life, you're down on investment, and just a well-timed like Ring of Destruction, right, Geki Break, or even Book of Moon, can just disrupt the combo so fully. Um, DK, since you were the one that faced this deck here, and you actually faced Aratos twice, I believe, in this tournament. Um,
Yes.
like, do you have any ideas for potential things that the Scientist deck could play to counter this sort of deck?
Um, well, I actually faced Aratus in locals finals too
Mm.
before, and we both played slightly different lists, and I tried to adjust at least my side deck to what I figured Aratus was going to bring, but it wasn't enough, as you can see.
Mm.
And yes, I completely agree. The main deck is very fragile. Um, right. So it was Clody who did a lot of testing. I believe he said he played 400, 500 hands with the FTK, and he said that he estimated his winning rate, his FTK rate, I'm sorry, his FTK rate to be 50%.
Mm.
So 50%, that sounds good for an FTK, but if you take into the calculation that you just lose if you don't get the FTK or if you go second, then it's actually not good, not at all.
Hmm.
Even if you go first with a regular deck, you should be favored. You should have like a winning percentage of more than 50%. You should have 55, 60, and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Probably the way to play scientist is not to lean into the FDK. You got to replace all of those fragile combo cards with versatile or robust cards that can allow you to come back from going second or from taking damage, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah. Uh, Oh, I was just gonna add as well. I very much agree with what both Eratos and DK were saying there, and why I think potentially the way to go for like the scientist and maybe the reasoning archetypes is potentially to maybe have it like a little bit of a package, right? Sort of similar to I know what is sort of called in, like, say, other formats, like the random Stein, right? Where you can basically maybe, like, play that fair game, but, like, if you can, like, do the scientist stuff out of nowhere potentially. And that's sort of, I feel like, the more scary aspect of scientists in this regard is that if you're playing in a deck that's quote unquote more fair or isn't fully going for the scientist FDK, it it's like you basically you sort of see this happen where it's like you play around everything, but you just randomly lose to the random scientist in this case. So
Yeah. And I mean,
yeah,
like, all you'd need for that sort of package, because I feel like most decks are going to be playing Scientist anyways, right? It's a great search off saying Inner Witch, can do so much for you because it's so versatile with the Fusion deck. Um, so it should probably be in a list no matter what. But I feel like to get the Scientist, OTK package in there, all you need is like triple Last Will and a Turtle. And like Last Will is a pretty good card just in this format in general, I think. So it could potentially be an option. I mean, Aratos or DK, what are your thoughts on that sort of idea of just playing the engine in
Oh,
a more typical deck?
yeah. No, I agree. I actually did this in some games post side. Exactly this triple last will, one turtle. And I wanted to add, I always kept triple scientist. I think scientist is real broken. The ability to spam multiple monsters, and I had metamorphosis too.
Mm.
So I could make a ball to stick or even 1,000 ice restrict if I just needed to stall. But if I'm not mistaken, Aratus only played one copy, so I would like to hear Aratus' thoughts on Scientist as a card.
I played 2 scientists in my list. I think like even in control mirrors, it's just a very good card to have.
Mm. Yeah, no, and also, we saw Tomatoes in this deck. Tomato can search it out if you need it. Um, like it's just incredible, and there are so many ways to get it to hand, get it to field, and just use it to make your opponent have a bad time.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Sorry to keep it brief, but I think I have to go here.
no worries. I mean, we're probably gonna
yeah,
wrap up the stream relatively soon, because that was a very very quick finals, but this is a very very quick
yeah,
format, and I think that's part of the fun of this format. Like, it's the only format with 3 magical scientists in it, which a lot of people won't necessarily like that. A lot of people won't necessarily like that there is an FTK in this format, but I think these games show that, like, just because there's an FTK in the format doesn't mean it's necessarily going to win all the time. It did very well this tournament. As DK, you were able to pilot it to second place, but it didn't actually end up winning here. And if a deck is sort of calibrated to face it, like Aratos' deck was, then it can do very well and potentially push Scientists out of the metagame. But that's part of the fun of exploring these new formats. You never know how the meta is going to shift. Maybe the Scientist decks will adapt in maybe the ways that we've said to this sort of more aggressive good stuff strategy. And then maybe they'll be more favored for the next Breaker tournament. But we'll just have to find out in the future. That's part of the fun of exploring these formats.
yeah.
Yep, for sure. Thanks for hosting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
no
go now.
problem. Thank you both for playing. Thank all of you for participating in the tournament as well. Very very fun. I'll just end the stream by going through some of the comments here that I didn't get to address
Well,
before.
Aratus, I wish you a good evening, right?
Yeah, you too. Take
Bye.
care, man.
Bye-bye.
But yeah, we see some of the comments mentioned. Janjo saying, "Just wait for Elmo TK." Mwahahaha. I'm planning on experimenting with that when it
Oh
does come
yeah,
out. It should be fun.
yeah.
Marco Jerry says, "I love Aratos." Yeah, we all love him here. Great
Oh,
player.
Yeah.
I
And
love. No, I want to say I love Marco Gary.
oh yeah, that's
I
true.
don't know if he.
Aw.
I don't know if he remembers me, but like he was the one I played my first game of Critter with. So shout out to him.
Oh wow, great stuff.
That's
And
really cool.
yeah, and it's great to see the love in this community. So if you ever are intimidated by playing these games in this format, just hop on in. We're a very kind community. But Wes Fowler says 50% pretty dog water, and yeah, I think that that probably will keep Scientist FTK out of the meta for the future. But you never know what's going to develop later on. I released a video earlier this week about how, or maybe it was last week, but that was last week. But it was basically about how, you know, FTKs being in a format didn't necessarily ruin it, and I think that's definitely true with Breaker as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's see. H. Chloe says,
You
yeah, if
will.
opponent opens IO, it's GG, and that is often the
Yeah.
case in these formats.
Yeah.
IO is just such a broken card. Honestly, I'm more frustrated by IO than the Scientist FTK. But you know, that's just
Right.
me.
Yeah, I got a bit of a love-hate relationship with that card, to be honest, but
Yeah.
I feel like that's gonna be that's a whole other discussion.
Oh
for
yeah,
another
for
time.
sure. And you know, I think we got it into it on some of the other streams that we've done here. But yeah, Marco Gary says shout out to you, my brother, for DK. So yeah, great to see the love being spread around. And Janjo Zone says short stream ever, Lamau, and yep, this probably will be the shortest stream ever because I think I'm gonna wrap
Yeah.
it up here. So thank you all
Well,
for watching. Thank
I-
you, Soul and DK, for joining. And
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly
Yeah.
just ask, do you want to like maybe like just tell about what locals or tournaments are going to potentially come up?
Oh, for sure.
Because
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a
Yeah.
very good idea. So, we do hold like tournaments and stuff, like locals tournaments and things like that. So the next locals will be probably in Yada, depending if Format Library holds the locals beforehand. But Format Library is holding a Yada tournament this Monday, so we want to, you know, allow people to practice in that format beforehand. If Format Library isn't already doing a sort of mini tournament before it starts. So that's probably what it will be in. But then we'll be holding locals for like Vampire format, which will be the next format we're exploring and things like that. So that'll be fun. We're also going to be having another monthly tournament in December, probably. It might be different because of the holiday season. We'll have to sort of see what people feel like with that. Maybe it will be a single day tournament, given the holidays make playing something over December kind of a bit difficult. But we'll have to see. So, yeah, but that's basically what we got going on here. If you enjoy this sort of content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We hold these streams and videos showing off gameplay in this and many other DM era formats. So it's always fun. And you know, one last thing, responding to some of the other comments here. Don't worry, History of YGO1. Not ignoring you. It's just I was keeping it to comments that I thought would be good for the end of the stream. So yeah, but that's gonna probably do it here. But yeah, thank you all for joining again, and thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. So until next time, I've been Ben from YGOFrom0. I'm signing off.
Bye bye.
right.